simplification must not mean a reduction in ambition. For the last 5 years, the Commission, Member States and MEPs have expended a lot of time and effort in attempting to communicate to citizens the importance of the Green Deal, the Farm to Fork strategy, for us now just to tear us up for the campaign of simplification itself. More importantly, many of our farmers and businesses are already embracing the changes and investments in meeting their obligations, and they should not lose out. First movers should not be penalised when it comes to deregulation. Finally, I want to see swift action on the areas of the single market that will benefit our competitiveness, particularly banking union and capital markets union. And let us also address the fact that Draghi mentioned 800 billion per annum additionally to make sure that Europe was competitive. So we have to address that huge deficit if we are to
very much, Mr. Kelleher.
For our
Next
citizens.
is Kira Peter Hansen, 1.5 minutes. Please keep to time.
Så fik vi det. Kommissionens længe ventede arbejdsprogram, som sætter retningen for Europa de kommende.
Thank you. The Commission work programme sets down the course for the next few years. The focus is on competition. That is, of course, important. We do need to have a society where you can establish a company and where your company can have a future. But we have also got to remember that we have a continent now where biodiversity is under threat, where the climate crisis is threatening us everywhere. And I feel here there is a clear lack of ambition in the area of green policy. Where are the goals of the Paris COP? They have simply been abandoned. We need much better policy for nature restoration. We need to impose the polluter pays principle. And we need much more courage for the convictions that we should have.
To withdraw the proposal on the EU Horizontal Anti-Discrimination Directive. I believe that this is a big mistake. In a time where we see attacks on our fundamental rights, withdrawing this proposal is the wrong way to go. I know it requires patience and courage to get this legislation over the finish line, but we've seen that it's possible to unlock equality legislation. So I urge you, Commissioner, please don't give up on our anti-discrimination laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold on, Ms. Peter Hansen. Can you take a blue card from Mr. Zdehovsky? Mr. Zdehovsky, go ahead. Wait. Press the button.
Dobrý den, paní kolegyně. Chci se vás zeptat na jednu věc. Myslíte, že zastavíte klimatickou změnu tím, že přenesete víc
Thank you. You're talking about climate change, but can you improve the situation with more regulation? For years, we have found that we have more and more bureaucratic requirements imposed on us, and the result is absolutely nothing. In real terms, we've got to achieve much more in terms of investment in projects which will really deliver.
To answer.
Thank you very much for the question, and I'm happy to see we have a proper debate in this House. I think looking at my own country, Denmark, actually gives you the answer, because Denmark is a quite highly regulated country. We've been pushing the market economy to fuel the green investments. We have strong Medicare, we have strong renewable energy sectors, and I think that's showing both that green aspects and competitiveness goes hand in hand, but also that, of course, we shouldn't fear steering the market economy. No one wants regulation just for the sake of regulation, but I think if we do it right, we will actually do a favor to Europe.
Thank you. Ms. Peter Hansen, Pasquale Tridico, 1.5 minutes.
Grazie. Presidente. Thank you, President. Commissioner, the Commissioner Working Programme raises many concerns. It's very dark and not very clear. You mentioned defense. Well, there's not enough in there to protect citizens, workers, and support for industrial sectors in difficulties such as the automotive industry. The defense program, the EDIP, has new funds for arms and an escalation in military development. Then there's the change in the REACH regulation on chemical substances, which will reduce our environmental protection. It's very dangerous. as far as the labor market, you need a structured way to face these transitions. We've asked for changes such as the SURE program during COVID to support competitiveness, to support our automotive industry when reconverting to electric. But many of these questions could come under the scope of the Union of Skills. And finally, your housing plan is good and it's very important for the Five-Star Movement, a step in the right direction, but its non-legislative nature and the very limited resources risk in seriously limiting the efficiency on the price of housing and the housing crisis. We need more concrete answers to protect workers and to support companies in launching their industries, which is a strategic asset for all of Europe. Thank you.
Next, Christina Anderson, 1 minute.
Thank you. Ja, es ist wenig überraschend, dass
It's hardly surprising that this Parliament isn't even allowed to vote on the work programme of the Commission. But why is this? The Christian Democrats have already set the course of the Union to 2029 and beyond. And the Parliament is superfluous. And there is no need for us. But if that's the situation, then there's no scope for excuses any longer. Whatever the Commission does or doesn't decide will firmly be held the responsibility of the Christian Democrats, and you will be held accountable and answerable. What Europe needs, of course, would be less EU, an end to the combustion engine ban by 2035, an end to the supply chain legislation and the ridiculous Green Deal and the sustainability reporting obligations. Where is the EU Government Efficiency Department? Of course, you don't want that. Instead of that, you want your Christian Democratic EU, which is going to be weaker economically by 2029, drowning in bureaucracy and a million miles further from the citizen than ever. So where is the bottom line? Well, shortly you're going to see, and it will be in the polling booths. You will see what the outcome of the elections will be, and I look forward to it.
Thank you, Madam President. Commissioner, now that the US aid has been stopped, we see how many NGOs and media are complaining of loss of funds. It's quite clear that in the name of development aid we've financed shady foreign interests. I think you should be more transparent about the agencies that you fund so that citizens know who is working for foreign powers. It's also important to oppose foreign interference in our politics. So do something about it. And look at what foreign businesses are financing, what private groups are financing. In the past, you've financed mercenaries abroad, so we need transparency.
Seconds.
Paní Konečná, o kom tady mluvíte, že jsou žoldáci? Vy sama tady léta si hřejete.
What mercenaries are you talking about? You yourself have been supporting Russia and have been a mouthpiece of Iran, and the people you support haven't given any transparency about that. Do you know what Iran is trying to do here? Are you aware of what they have been doing to try to influence decisions? And tell us a bit more about your contacts with the Russian ambassador. Maybe you can explain to us what the Communist Party in Czechia is doing.
Cesty, kde tvrdím, že jsem europoslanec a něco tam vyjednávám. Já se nescházím s ruskými poslanci, buďte úplně v klidu, ale jsem ráda, že se na to ptáte.
Colleague, unlike you, I don't receive money from Bahrain or Russia. You speak of Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, cooling off period. there is a lobbyist who was accused here. I'm speaking of an ex-commissioner. I would like to ask the commissioner how to prevent all of this from happening again. In the past, the Commission was linked to all of these financial institutions and people who are not in favor of the interests of the EU. Do you not care about this?
Minutes. Wait, hold on, Dolores. Your microphone is not on. Can you please press? There it is.
Thank you, Presidenta. Europa no se rinde.
Europe never gives up. We didn't do this when war was ravaging, when communism built walls, or during the financial crisis, or when the pandemic had us indoors confined. Nor will we give up now that our competitiveness and global leadership are called into question. It's true that the rules that shape the modern world have changed, and the future means innovation, energy, artificial intelligence, and less red tape. But there are principles that we will never give up on. Now that power means economy, technology, and military power over other nations, Europe, more than ever, needs to react with intelligence and diplomacy. Intelligence so we can still be free before Eurosceptics who want to destroy us, and diplomatic because our problems will not be solved if we break relations with our transatlantic partners, such as Pedro Sanchez wishes to do. But we can't allow others to abuse our industry, as the other extreme does. Europe built its leadership through trade and diplomacy, not through conflict and isolation. We need to once again be a competitive continent, but we also need to be a safe continent. And this means rule of law, defense, and borders. Sanchez had turned Spain into a defective democracy where there's no separation of powers and there's an attack against the press and there is a fifth column within. He just wants to stay in power and foster corruption amongst his cronies, and this must stop. Europe cannot allow 26 countries to be aligned with the drama of the tragedy of immigration, while Sanchez opens the back door in the southern flank, and while people traffickers do as they wish. Europe has will, talent, and experience. We showed this in the pandemic, in the crisis, and we faced populism, and we will do this again in this time of safety, innovation. Let's do it again.
Next is Mohammed Shaheen, 1.5 minutes.
The sky was the limit with the Green Deal. People spoke of the Brussels effect. We were inspiring people. We led by example in the global climate agenda. And I fondly remember President von der Leyen talking about our man on the moon moment. Are we now aborting the mission and reversing all our achievements? Because landing on the moon is a very complicated matter. We cannot cut rules, deregulate, simplify, and think we will achieve the mission. And somehow, by cutting and simplifying, we think we will have so much savings that we bridge the gap of 700 billion that Draghi talks about. Without means, without protecting our social and environmental conditions, the real European way of life, we are throwing away the child with the bathwater. And we will never reach the moon. Simplifications, yes. Deregulation, no. To reshape our industry, we need to go beyond simplification. We need new, fresh money. We need investments, a new budget. Focused, fine, but only reallocation will not make us more resilient and increase our competitiveness. So, Mr. Leenaerts, yes, we do not want only changes by commas and dots. We want a strong MFF. We want our own resources. We want a new steel and metal plan, especially after tariffs that are presented by Trump. We need a competitiveness fund. We have to show ambition again, to show Europeans that we work for them, to combat global warming and leave no one behind. That's how we secure our place in the world, and the world needs a strong Europe.
Thank you. Now Tamás Deutsch, 1.5 minutes.
Az európai polgárok a
European citizens want to stop mass migration, the protection of borders. so that we stop 1 million illegal migrants from coming to Europe. Europeans don't want illegal migrants to murder, to have terrorists with migrant background slaughter innocent people. People want a safe Europe again. And then the European Commission, what does it do? It wants to speed up the catastrophic migration pact. Europeans want peace. The Ukraine strategy has been a disaster. The sanction policy means that energy prices have skyrocketed. And now the European Commission, after all the billions spent, it's ready to finance the Ukraine war with any amount needed. Brussels sent a war message which is deep green to farmers and destroyed the farming sector. And now the Commission wants more Green Deal and to demolish the well-functioning financing system for the farms. People have had enough. The world has changed, and Brussels needs change as well.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And you were talking about the danger posed by the illegal migration, the deaths, the horrors that it's causing. And I wonder, why did Orban's regime early release more than 2,000 people smugglers who are contributing to the illegal migration just before the Slovak elections? Is this the contribution that your government regime is trying to do to stop illegal migration? Thank you.
Hungary, the Hungarian government, the government of Viktor Orban, since 2015 has applied a technical border fence. You and the European Commission have been attacking us continuously. This border fence has resulted in stopping 1 million illegal migrants from entering. We would have had more 1 million migrants without that. We have arrested 2,000 people smugglers and we expulsed them from the European Union. I think we did well.
Leader Pereira. 2004 was a year of reports and elections, and 2020, and now we have a year that requires decisions. The working program from the Commission is a marathon that we need to win. Good ideas have to go beyond just the ink on paper. If the name of the game is competitiveness, then we'll be competitive. Let's cut the red tape that is a hindrance for companies, but let's do it seriously. Let's seriously go from decarbonization as a sacrifice and to decarbonization as an opportunity. And let us bring innovative projects and stop the capital drain in Europe. We could bring another word onto the stage, which is leadership. In an unstable and uncertain and unpredictable world, Europe needs to lead with trade agreements so that we can give greater international opportunities for our companies. Europe needs to intelligently lead when it comes to defense. In a world of disinformation and negationism, Europe needs to lead by example with less regulation, and let's not strangle the future. The future will not wait for us, and we are still in time for leadership, so let's do so.
Card from Mr. Oliveira. Will you take it?
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Pereira, you mentioned competitiveness. When we look at the Commission working program, we see that competitiveness would be competition between companies, but not just any kind of competition. In this working program, there are fewer requirements for international companies, and it makes it easier for big transnational companies. So what about SMEs? And what is the consequence for a country like Europe, which is mostly SMEs, and they will be strangled by these multinationals? Thank you for the question, colleague. One of our concerns, and especially mine over the last 5 years, which I've said time and again in this chamber, is that we need to lower the administrative burden on SMEs. This is something that we agree with the European Commission and is in the Commission's working program. I think that we need to look at another angle, which is that Europe has a demographic crisis, and we need economic growth in order to overcome all of the difficult challenges we face, and this is done with a structured program and with action. And this is why we would like the Commission in the coming months to be diligent in facing these needs so that we can help SMEs.
1.5 minutes.
Herr Kommissar Šefčovič, wenn man der Debatte laut...
Commissioner Šefčovič, thank you. Listening to this debate, one really does have to wonder why Ms von der Leyen isn't here. But the more the debate goes on, the more you realise why she's not here, because we're hardly setting the heather alight with this debate. We've heard endless mention of simplification, but simplification isn't too simple. Let me give you a few examples. We have got to achieve some quality work. We've really got to maintain competitiveness. So look in the programme and find the measures which are going to deliver good jobs, and SMEs are going to provide for tackling child poverty, for work-life balance, for good jobs, for prosperity for the workers. We can't even see a proper framework or roadmap to competitiveness. And where is the investment programme that Draghi mentioned? This is just a pale shadow of what he was proposing. Yes, cutting red tape, but investment, which you claim is the backbone of this report, is not even properly shored up in this. Where is it? Where is the structure for achieving productive competitiveness and improving our productivity? Where is the strategy for letting people find somewhere decent to live? Finally, affordable housing. Where is it? There's homelessness everywhere in Europe. We need to be helping people to have access at least to short-time rents in decent housing. And where are the green measures? They're all missing these things.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Commissioner. Europe is lagging behind, and we've not yet felt the full impact of the Green Deal legislation pushed through in the last term. Sustainability reporting and due diligence directives, the combustion engine ban, CBAM, the taxonomy, and ETS2 will all increase costs and hurt our competitiveness. The regulatory burden will grow. More economic activity and jobs will move abroad. And what does the Commission propose for the next 5 years? You talk about addressing Europe's cost of living and competitiveness crisis and repairing some of the damage caused while spellbound by the green agenda. But this work program makes it clear that you plan to unleash a new tsunami of legislation and double down on green policies. And that's no surprise. You yourself, Commissioner, said when commenting on the massive bureaucracy, simplification doesn't mean deregulation. And instead, the Commission is pushing for an expanded EU budget and new EU taxes. That's how you manage decline rather than making the EU a beacon of prosperity and innovation.
Thank you, Mr. Weymouth. You have a blue card. Will you take it? Will you take? Mr. Grazoulis, go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
What do you think? What is your opinion? Do those political forces that created these problems, the crazy Green Deal with which Europe becomes uncompetitive, uncurbed migration that does extreme harm to Europe, can these measures tackle those problems, or do you think they are not capable of solving those problems by the current governing majority? Thank you.
Well, I think that the European Commission should do like we did in Sweden. We replaced the word renewables with the word fossil-free, because we knew that industry competitiveness demands a baseload energy production, meaning nuclear. The Commission has yet not understood that, but they will unleash new goals for renewables, new targets, making us even more uncompetitive. So this must be done as soon as possible, and I hope that the EPP will push for that. We stand ready to work with you to make policies sane again.
Thank you. Mr. Gerbrandy, 2 minutes.
Dank u wel, voorzitter.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioner, colleagues. Europe is by far the best place in the world to live. Nowhere else in the world do you have our level of freedom, democracy, welfare and well-being. The European way of life is so important that we even have a commissioner for it. But we do have to pull out every stop to ensure we stay the best place to be, because we are threatened. We are threatened internally by nationalism and externally geopolitical threats, economic shortages and high energy prices. And we have to be clear, the Commission programme is addressing the right things, the internal market strategy, the 90% CO2 reduction by 2040, European defence industry, and also simplification of the rules. But all of this requires a strong centralist Europe with a big budget, with much more own resources. So that's what we have to work for. And perhaps the most important thing is that the member states have to move in that direction. They have to act as one. And that's why it's a pity that there are no changes proposed to the treaties, because a bolder, simpler and faster Europe is only possible if we get rid of national vetoes in the Council. Also, Parliament. We should follow this agenda. And we can only do that with a strong pro-European coalition at the centre of our institution. And listening to this debate, once again, I see on the right, far right and far left margins of this Parliament, there is no solution being offered to the European problems that we face. We can't go back to the past. I heard a colleague from the ECR saying that we should return back to coal. I mean, even Donald Trump wouldn't dare suggest that.
You have a blue card from Mr. Smith. 671.
Dank u wel, voorzitter. Meneer Gerbrandy.
Thank you. Mr. Gerbrandy, you were talking about threats and lack of realism, but I think the biggest threat is the fact that some parties, including yours, don't want to get out of the labyrinth that you find yourself in. You need a compass to get out of this. In 2030, we're going to have to pay 15 billion to implement the Green Deal. How can you explain that to the taxpayer? You are putting more pressure on the taxpayer and you're creating more red tape. Yes, I'm not surprised to hear that question. If anyone is lost in a labyrinth, it's you. You live, as I do, in a country that is actually below sea level in large swathes of its territory. What do you think it will cost if the sea levels rise? What the investments that we need to keep our country safe are well worth the money to go to a cleaner and a safer world. That's what the investment we need to keep Europe the best place to live.
Thank you, Madam President. Dear Commissioner, the other day I criticized you for US, the trade deal and the trade war that we are entering. Now, I must say it's not easy, the job you are doing here. While we were sleeping, Commission was working. That's a good thing. It's a good point, but we could have received the document as well. because we were not sleeping, we were waiting as well to listen and to discuss these issues on how to improve European competitiveness, how to improve European defence, how to improve European security, and what are you going to deliver to us? I mean, obviously in September, but while we are sleeping, the Trump administration is working hard and delivering in the first days much more than we are going to receive in the first months. So please, I would just want to underline some of the priorities that I would like to see. The white paper on the future of European defence should be a guiding roadmap for our security and strengthening of European pillar of NATO, and should and must renew security cooperation with our transatlantic allies and the UK. We must also deepen our ties with partners in the southern neighbourhood, as the protection of their borders that we never really cared about is a key to preserve our security as well. The second subject I would like to point is a new pact for the Mediterranean that will build comprehensive partnership based on areas of mutual interest and nothing else and nothing more, no financing NGOs that they will live from salon politics. And however, the most important topic of the Commission work is the strengthening of our competitiveness. The last one is the AI. The First Amendment of the US Constitution that guarantees freedom of speech also is reflected in the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. But freedom of expression does not come without accountability for what is being said. Therefore, I call on the end of anonymity behind the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zofko. Now, Damien Boeselager, 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, President. Commissioner, over the last 50 years, the US listed 200 companies with a market value of more than 10 billion euros. In Europe, we listed 14. These companies are not just any companies. They're the companies that shape the way we live, how we communicate, how we shop, and how we entertain ourselves. And I see in this work program that we again differentiate between competitiveness, industry, and then on the other side, startups and scale-ups. I think that's a fundamental mistake. We have to think our competitiveness, our industry, from those who innovate, from the startups and scale-ups, and then we can be able to compete. Let me look at the program from that perspective. First, compliance. It's great that we have the 28th regime, the EU Inc. as a proposal in there, but when I look at harmonization of our rules in Europe, there is too little. Simplification must mean harmonization. Second, when I look at capital, it's great that we look at the securitization again, but I wonder where is this proposal on venture capital that you have been proposing in the past? I can't see it. We need money to go into the future industries there as well. And then third, talent, access to talent. I'm sorry, but there is too little when it comes to activation of the female workforce. When I look at the internal migration in Europe, it's impossible to hire someone across the continent without having tax issues. Why is it not possible to go there? And lastly, on talent migration. The debate we have here in this House, but across Europe on migration, is too negative. We need to attract all these smart people from the Silicon Valley that are now looking for a new home. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrei Novakov, 1.5 minutes.
How good it is to have a speech when there is someone in the room. Thank you, President, for that. Dear colleagues, the European Parliament is not a political machine that wakes up only before elections. It's our duty to protect citizens every single day. Every single day. It doesn't matter if we talk about travelers, consumers, or workers. It's our duty to protect them. If you board a plane, if you take the train, or if you drive across borders, you have to be safe and protected, and you have to know that your rights in Europe are guaranteed. If your flight gets cancelled, then you need a single phone number to call. If your luggage is lost, then you have to have a single phone number to call. And passenger rights has to be strengthened. I believe the European Commission Works Programme has to reflect on that. To protect citizens means to protect the job. We cannot allow any more policies that make symbolic European companies to move from Brussels and Wolfsburg to China and Mexico. To expand is one thing. To close our own factories and move them abroad is completely another. For this reason, we have to refuel our industry. Not necessarily with fossil fuels, but to refuel again and to protect our workers, to protect our industry, to protect our continent. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Yanis Maniatis, 1.5 minutes.
Dear colleagues, the work program of the Commission unfortunately does not rise to the occasion. It seems that the President has not grasped this new geopolitical environment. All of the environment has been thrown off balance, everything we knew until today. So we see that in the letters, both of the High Representative as well as the Commissioner that is responsible for the Mediterranean, they were supposed to draw up a cohesive policy for the Middle East, but this has now gone away. All we see are generalities, whereas at the same time, the Middle East remains a top priority for the EU. The Gaza is hanging by a thread. We have new people at the helm in Lebanon, and we do not know what the next day will be. So we expect to see what the strategy for the Mediterranean will be at the third quarter of the year. But as we have seen in these first few weeks of the Trump administration, we are in a new world. The EU should be ready to support this multilateral governance system that is based in the United Nations Organization, the respect of international law and the integrity of borders. So, of course, we do have a very good first step, which is the Bible for the European defense. But we need to start funding immediately. We cannot wait for defense investments at the expense of the welfare state. Strategic autonomy should finally become a reality. Thank you very much.
Jorge Buxa de Villalba, 1.5 minutes.
Gracias, President. Thank you, President. Can we play the Titanic soundtrack? Because Europe is drowning, is sinking, and you're playing the violin. You have a European Commission program for 2025 where you want to approve 63 new regulations. How does Brussels want these companies to succeed if they've got this burden on them? This is an insult, and you are betraying Europe. Your ambitions will ruin the people. Have you not heard that you don't create wealth, that you only consume it, and a lot of it? What we need to do is to step away from the Paris Agreement and send your friend Soros to the COP. Fishers, young people have no jobs. Companies are firing their employees, but everybody has higher taxes and more debt. The automotive industry is closing down. 35,000 fired by Volkswagen in Germany, and they'll be voting AfD. In the farming sector, the EPP, you cheated them again, but it is one of the many suicidal ideas, such as the Green Deal and the Agenda 2020. Europe needs a radical change, and you are doing nothing. I hope that the winds of change bring good governments that suspend the Green Deal, do away with the United Nations globalist agenda, and impose as a priority reindustrialization and prefer European products, lower taxes and burden and administrative burdens. And only in this way will European genius be born again, and Europe will be great again. Thank you.
Mr. Axinia, 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam President. They say that at the fall of Constantinople, Byzantine theologians behind barricades, they were talking about the sex of angels. This looks a lot like functionaries that are disconnected, far removed from reality. So much paperwork, so much bureaucracy that does nothing but proliferate the legislation in the EU. It creates huge frustration among the citizens of member states, while others develop high technology in medicine or in energy. The EU has connected the bottle tap, the bottleneck to the bottle. Recently, the growth prospect for Europe has been forecasted to 1%, but Trump is rebuilding in Washington together with Musk. Such simplification would do good in the bureaucracy chaos of the EU.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Commissioner, I woke up early this morning just to go through the document because I didn't want that my speech is based on the leaked draft document that was circulating around European media. And I have to say I was quite surprised this morning when I saw that something is missing. Something what was in the leaked document is not in the final document, and this is the European Affordable Housing Plan. And this is really quite shocking because I think that we agreed, this House and the Commission, that we are facing the housing crisis. Look at the faces of these young people who are also sitting up on the galleries, who will very soon also challenge and face the crisis of not being able to pay for their rent. So I'm begging you and I'm calling you, and please, your assistant who is also taking the notes, please write it down and underline that on the next college, reconsider this idea to put back affordable housing plan into the Commission work programme, because this is something that we have to do it to protect social Europe. This is the promise which has been done from the President, and also the Parliament is ready to back up it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bozanac. Now, Tomislav Sokol, 1.5 minutes.
Poštovana predsjednice,
President, dear colleagues, the Commission Work Programme for 2025 is a strategic document which should make a strong shift for Europe, which would make our continent more secure and more competitive. We had to make a compromise with the irrational green policies, which brought about the industrialization of the EU. Yes, we must protect the environment, but we must also protect the economy. I hope that this work program of the Commission will enable us to keep up with our geopolitical partners and will make Europe attractive for investments. This especially goes for biotech. The adoption of the Act on Critical Medicines is an absolute priority for this year. In addition, when speaking about competitiveness, we have to talk about the price of energy and reduce the dependence of Europe on foreign sources. How can we compete on the market if we pay higher energy prices? This is why we must diversify the energy mix. The focus must be on clean but reliable energy sources like nuclear energy and hydrogen. We have to build infrastructure, the interconnection to interconnect the energy market. We need a clear vision, and we need to act fast. Unless we act fast, the other global forces will engulf us. And I'm glad that the European Commission is on the right path.
Minutes.
Thank you, President, Commissioner, dear colleagues. As we present the European Commission's work programme, we're hoping to strengthen democracy and trust in our institutions. And I hope that the President of the European Commission should have respect for the most democratic institution of the European Union, which is the European Parliament. And discussing this document, this work program today, here, also means showing respect for democracy at a moment where we all feel that our democracies, both for member states and for the European project as a whole, is in crisis and under attack. And when we hear the Commissioner speak very quickly over all the points while not speaking deeply about any of them, we felt that competitiveness is key. But, Commissioner, there is no competitiveness without democracy. There's no competitiveness without a strong rule of law that independently has independent judiciary and can transparently follow all procedures. There is no competitiveness if there is no equal opportunity for all. There is no competitiveness if we don't have the ability for us to choose who will lead this European space. There is no competitiveness if women in the working world are not treated the same as men. There is no democracy nor competitiveness if we're not able to look at the green transition and the digital transition with the social justice it requires. And this is why, I'll finish, Chair, that the competitiveness and democracy have to go hand in hand, and institutions require respect. We deserve respect by having President von der Leyen here.
1 minute.
Gracias, Presidenta. Thank you, President. Commissioner, why is President von der Leyen not here? Why is she evading democratic scrutiny? It's because you are simply awaiting approval from America, not us. You don't care whether people perpetrate genocide or sexual abuse. You don't feel that they need to be held to account unless they might be threatening you specifically. What about all these deportations of people from the country? What about undermining women's rights and trans rights? What about what is happening to the Cubans? What is happening to the Gazans? Trump didn't come from nowhere. He has simply been enabled by the elites of Europe and the elites of America, who have enabled him to get to power. You've applauded the racist policies of Meloni, and you have simply turned housing into a negotiating matter. You've undermined the independence of Palestine and our energy security, all in the interest of cozying up to the US. The end result is war, fewer rights, less economic prosperity, and more suffering on the part of the vulnerable, the women. We need to have power to defend ourselves also from you.
Mr. Commissioner, colleagues, it is a pleasure to take part in this debate because many people have expressed support for this commission, and now they're criticizing it. I didn't vote for this commission, and I explained my reasons for that. Nevertheless, I do think that the Commission programme is fine. It's a good proposal. It's February now, and now it remains to be seen how you will work together with the European Parliament in order to turn this proposal into a reality. The draft programme is important because it comes at a very difficult moment in geopolitical terms. It's difficult to see how things will turn out. We'll have to be patient and see how we get out of this morass in which we find ourselves. But let's wait and see how you breathe life into this programme.
Thanks, Madam President, Commissioner. Yesterday, the Munich Security Conference published their annual security index. Compared to the previous years, there are remarkable, although not surprising, changes. Migration as a result of climate change and war still ranks first, followed by rising concerns about Russia, followed by fear of terroristic attacks, worries about cyber attacks and threats by international organized crime. Amongst other worries, perception of disinformation campaigns, worries about trade wars have seen a stark increase. This is, of course, a snapshot, but it's not the first one, and it's one that requires a clear, a bold, a united answer. Security is a collective effort. It requires a whole of government, a whole of society approach, both at European and at national level, in terms of defence, in terms of internal security, and in terms of preparedness. Thankfully, these three policies are a crucial part of the work programme, and they need to be connected in the best way possible. There's a lot at stake, but this House, this Union has always risen to the challenge, and I ask us to do that again. We have the tools and we have the means to do things better, but we need to be bold and we need to be ambitious. It is a testing time, but we have it in our hands to work for a Europe that is strong, that is prosperous, and that is safe. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next, Alexei Navalny, 1.5 minutes.
First of all, I would like to speak about the disrespect shown today in front of this House when we were not treated, and it was stated clearly by the Commission, as not high level enough. And I ask the Commission what is high level enough for the President of the Commission.
Today I'd like to speak about what we need from the European Commission and what we need as a European Parliament, and what is missing from this program that you've presented to me today. First of all, your initiatives are completely missing the point. First of all, we're here in this plenary speaking about the importance of protecting digital regulation at the European level. And what happened? 2 days ago, the European Commissioner Verheugen said that the AI, the exact DMA, that this is what the European Commission is going to be focusing on, things we've already approved in the previous legislature. What about other legislation, such as the right to disconnect, the European social model? I find all of this completely lacking from your plan. The right to disconnect was approved about 4 years ago in this Parliament. We had the Charter of Digital Rights presented to the European Commission. We heard this in the State of the Union speech. But once again, I see that this is missing. And this shows that the European Commission is completely disconnected from our citizens. Thank you.
I give the floor now to Carlo Ressler, 1.5 minutes.
Hvala puno, podpredsjednice, povjereniče.
Thank you, Vice President, Commissioner, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. This Parliament is not the one that it was before the elections. The circumstances are widely different to those 5 years ago. The world is much more dangerous, economically uncertain and politically unstable. And this is why the Commission cannot continue business as usual. It is time for decisiveness, the new dynamics in our work and tangible results. Commission's working programme is a key signpost for our activities this year. The focus is clear: security, reducing bureaucracy, and the accountability for policies that go hand in hand with real life. However, our duty is not only to plan, it is also to deliver. 8 months after the elections, Europe no longer has time to talk and complain and whine. Our citizens, our companies are struggling with high bureaucratic nonsense and burden. This actually means that when it comes to green policy, dogma has to be set aside. We have to act quickly when it comes to policies and projects, and we need rules that help and not hinder. Just as it was stated in the communication of multi-annual financial framework, status quo is not an option. This work programme gives us a good direction to go in, but there is one question that remains to be answered. Will European companies, innovators and entrepreneurs feel the alleviation of circumstances in their real life and our citizens better living standards? The time for warm-up is up. It's time to act. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Commissioner, I am curious to hear many of the things that have been said here this morning and about how the European Union is simply on the margins of the global community now. This is quite a strange thing to hear, because during the election campaign we heard that the Green Deal would enhance competitiveness of our companies. But now it seems to be a bit of a change of heart. Colleagues, what is happening here? A similar thing is happening about the defence of our borders, although I'm glad to hear you're a bit more serious-minded about that, because there is a serious need for it. I've heard people talking about not putting together majorities that are not acceptable to the Parliament. Well, frankly, we need to respect the majorities of the citizens of Europe who voted for us. Look at what's happened to the farmers. They've been accused of being polluters rather than those who produce our food, of many other things, and of not being productive enough. I would like to hark back, please, to what Ms. Irache Garcia said this morning about the title of the debate. She talked for 4 long minutes about the Patriots Summit in Madrid. Well, let's learn from our strategy. We can talk about other people and we can pin the blame on their door rather than recognise our own feelings.
Thank you, Madam President, dear Commissioner. Last time, it was going to be a geopolitical commission. Regarding the results, obviously, none of our enemies or allies is impressed. This time, it's about the simplification of regulation and economic competitiveness. Yet, our businesses are not hopeful, and we have spent time recently chasing American tech companies instead of growing our own. We are so excellent at making big plans, but not efficient at achieving concrete results. Families do not eat plans for dinner, and security on paper will not protect our women in the streets against rape, citizens against crime, or our ports against drug-related violence. Eternal plans on paper will not fix issues like the return policy, a key area that has been neglected. Migration policy, especially return, is a key priority, and I appreciate the fact that a proposal is coming. I am worried about the fact that the left could block it again. Security threats, especially terrorism, is far from being defeated, and we keep giving money to the wrong people and organizations. We don't care about the lack of respect for our principles. I call on the Commission to work with the forces in this House who really want to defend our security, competitiveness and future.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kanko.
If you do this, we will be respected and trusted.
Thank you. Martin Hojsík, Vice President, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, the Commission work plan should be about security, competitiveness. But how can we be secure if we still are dependent on import of fossil fuels, including from regimes which are waging war against us, which we consider as enemies? And how can we gain independence when actually we are undermining our own innovators, our own scale-ups, when we are forcing them to leave to other countries? And no, it's not the European regulation. The Sustainable Finance Net framework has brought 440 billion taxonomy-compliant investments, and that's not counting the 2024. Asset managers which are covering 6.6 trillion euros in assets are saying, please keep it. Don't undermine it, because you lose credibility, you lose our money. So that's the worry, that the simplification might actually throw out the baby instead of the water. What we need to look at, and what I'm missing in the Commission work programme, is something else. Single market. And that is something where, even the IMF is very clearly showing that actually, forget about Trump's 25%. On the manufacturing, the internal tariffs, because of the fragmentation, are 40%, and 120% on services. We pretend that we have a single market. We don't. And we're throwing our companies. It's not the effort to save our home, our planet. It's the member states fragmenting and doing their own interest groups and protecting their own vested interest. Stronger Europe. That's what is important part of this. 2 more issues from the work programme that I'm kind of missing and would like to see stronger. We're losing the disinformation war. We're losing there's incredible pressure on the civil society, and I think this is where the Commission needs to be bolder within Europe and outside Europe. And last thing, bit of humanity. Millions of people called for the end of the cage age. Commission, it's time to deliver. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hojsík. Angelika Niebler, 1.5 minutes.
Frau Präsidentin, vielen Dank.
Madam President, Vice President, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, we need to make Europe attractive again as a place to do business, to manufacture. We need to strengthen our industry and attract investment to Europe. That's what we need to do over the next few years. The Commission work programme, in my view, sounds promising. They are geared towards more competitiveness. The turn of the tide is coming, and it is not business as usual, as you rightly said, Commissioner. We need to reduce red tape, and that is to be addressed. Investment is going to be made in the infrastructure for the future, in energy, reducing costs. That's all well and good. Now we need to have courageous proposals. It is good that we are finally seriously addressing bureaucracy, getting rid of all the red tape that is the bane of the lives of our businesses, get rid of rules that have no added value, have the courage finally to get rid of this thicket of rules. That's a good thing. I'm happy to see that there are no rules on AI liability laws. I don't think we need that. When it comes to sustainability reporting, things are really getting out of control. I think we need to try to counteract that, and I'm looking forward to proposals on this. We need to invest in our future, dear colleagues. That means we need to build data centers. America is showing the way here. The proposal to support AI, build giga factories, so that we can train our own European artificial intelligence models. That's what we need. That's the right approach. We need to invest where necessary, for example, in the European Sky Shield. This is what it comes down to. Show that Europe is strong, capable of action, and that is concentrating on the essentials.
Now Anna Brulka, 1.5 minutes.
Dziękuję, Pani Przewodnicząca, Panie Komisarzu.
Thank you, Madam President, Mr. Commissioner. It seems that the European Commission has finally understood that uncontrolled mass migration is a great crime on Europe, albeit you are the last one to do so. After a period of enthusiasm followed by denial after denial, you have understood that Europe is not safe and Europeans cannot feel safe on the streets of their cities. Instead of debating, you need to act. We demand an immediate program for deportation of all illegal migrants. We demand an immediate launch of a program to combat criminal groups involved in human trafficking. We demand that this program also include in its investigations non-governmental organizations involved in aiding and abetting illegal entry into the European Union. We demand that the external borders of the Union be sealed immediately and unconditionally. We demand that the Member States have the full sovereign right to introduce additional, even stricter criteria. The Commission is faced with a major challenge of drawing up a return directive because until now, expulsion of illegal migrants has been an inefficient process fraught with organizational and legal problems. If you are not able to do this, then resign. We, Patriots for Europe, put the interests of European citizens first. This is why we are determined to protect Europe's external borders, to stop illegal migration and to preserve Europe's cultural identity and to ensure the security of our citizens.
Az őrültség legbiztosabb jele. It's completely crazy when you keep doing the same thing and you expect different results. Listening to the Commission's 2025 work plan, this came into my mind. When will you realize that the globalist federalist recipes have failed? Migration and energy crisis, rising poverty and unemployment, competitive disadvantage, demographic crisis and public security emergency. Your failed decisions and you are proposing the same thing. This is really crazy. Instead of mass migration, we need effective border protection, family-friendly policy, stop to population change, a reduction in the number of abortions, and mass returns. We should stop the sanctions to stop energy crisis. We don't need these national sovereignty thing. You have to respect democracy. Instead of the Green Deal, we have to support creation. If you want to stop the crisis in Europe, you have to throw away the worn-out record.
1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mrs. President. Mr. Commissioner, καλωσορίζω το πρόγραμμα εργασίας.
I welcome the work program of the Commission for 2025. There are many important points in order to have more resilience, competitiveness, and cohesion in the European Union. I would like to focus on the issues of safety and security as well as the issues of asylum and migration. In order to have competitiveness, first of all, we need safety. Also, the fight against organized crime, that among others includes the trafficking of people and cybercrime, is something that we definitely need in order to have safety for our people. The Safeguarding of our external borders means that we need to have long-term strategic planning as well as operational coordination. Otherwise, the populists will make their voices even louder, and they use human suffering through propaganda and fake news. But that means that the Asylum and Migration Pact should be uniformly applied. We cannot have member states going their own way. So we need to have a legislative framework in order to speed up returns and conclude accords in order to return people to third countries. In the same vein, we need to have returns that will be respectful of human rights, and these decisions will be recognized across the EU. Thank you very much.
And Fritzon, 1.5 minutes.
Von der Leyen, you should be here. Fru talman, kommissionen presenterar...
President, the Commission is presenting the most important document of the year, and the President has no time to come to the European Parliament. But it looks like the Commission program is difficult to defend. It's missing many things. What about the Green Deal? What about investing in the health of people or equality, the rights of girls, young women, women in general? We, as Social Democrats, believe that violence carried out by a man against a woman is a European crime. We need to have legislation on consent. The right to abortion also needs to be legalized. We also would like a health law so that we can have greater access to medicine while also keeping in mind that we are living through a period where we need to remain strong before climate change. We've seen droughts, we've seen fires, and it's very clear that as a European Union we need to act jointly, and we also need investment. We need to invest in people, we need to invest in companies. The Commission needs to show strength and leadership during a very difficult time, which is why I would tell Ms. von der Leyen, do what we need in favor of the European Union.
Danke für das Wort, meine sehr geehrten Damen.
Thank you very much, President. Ladies and gentlemen, in the light of the presentation of this morning's work programme, one honestly gets the conclusion that all we have is inflated bureaucracy, which is going to carry on sine die, and an inappropriate structure. Likewise, there are too many commissioners, 27 commissioners, who are simply generating endless regulation, which is making life very complicated for the citizens, and all they want to do is carry on in their current way. Our approach is not populist. I would simply refer you to the Lisbon Treaty and say that really that embodies an institution with 18 commissioners, not 27. And the exceptions that have been generated along the way have led to this woefully inflated commission with woefully inflated ideas and woefully inflated numbers of regulations, which are a millstone round the neck of every company and worker in Europe. Where's the one-in, one-out proposal, which we heard about in the past? What's happened to that? It's just disappeared. You're just signing up to endless measures of a bureaucratic nature, which, as I say, are a millstone round the neck of ordinary people. Your inflated numbers of regulation and aspirations are absolutely irrelevant. In 10 years, you've not resolved the problem of illegal migration. You've not achieved anything other than deindustrialise the continent with your Green Deal. What about the conflict between Russia and Ukraine? You've learned nothing there. You haven't managed to deliver a ceasefire. Endless people are losing their lives. There's endless deaths on the battlefields there. Change your policy, finally, otherwise the electorate will get rid of you.
It's from Ms. Woutmans.
No, thank you.
No. Beata Szydło, 1 minute.
Dziękuję, Pani Przewodnicząca.
Thank you, President. Ladies and gentlemen, during its last term, European Commission with Madame von der Leyen led to a huge economic crisis in Europe, lack of competitiveness,
a deep crisis concerning our security and standards of living of Europeans. And all this was caused, among others, by New Green Deal and Migration Pact. So in this term, the European Commission, headed by the same Mrs. von der Leyen, decided to fight the problems that it created on its own during the last term. How does it want to do it? By continuing New Green Deal, by continuing the Migration Pact, adding Mercosur, which will be a disaster for European farmers. It is harder and harder for Europeans to live. They are less and less secure. Energy prices, cost of living, this is a disaster. More and more companies going bankrupt. Industry is being closed. People are losing jobs. Can we do something? Yes. What? Let's stop the New Green Deal, Mercosur and Migration Pact. Thank you.
1.5 minutes.
President, Commissioner, colleagues, the Commission Work Programme 2025 gives us the tools to strengthen the European Union. The message needs to be clear. It's time to invest and simplify. Invest in the decarbonization of industry, such as part of the industrial deal, so that we can look at our strategic sectors. And for this, we need to have energy links across borders. This would guarantee greater integration and energy security in Europe. Investing in renewable energies, green hydrogen, to have a sustainable and clean future. We need to lower the amount of red tape and give incentives for innovation. We can't allow our SMEs behind. And we also need to support small and medium level access to capital so that these companies can grow sustainably. We need clean technologies such as semiconductors and artificial intelligence, which will guarantee the EU's strategic autonomy in the global value chains. We also need to simplify the access to funds and incentives, guaranteeing that no sector, region, company, or person is left behind. But for all of this to be possible, we need to invest in people, in their education and retraining through an alliance of competences. Our people, will ensure a just and fair transition. And now is the time to invest in simplifying the road.
Blue card, will you take it from Mr. Oliveira? Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Cunha, you spoke of industry, and in this work program there are many measures to strengthen the industrial capacity of large companies in the EU, particularly on the international scale. But there is no measure to bring back industrial capacity in countries like Portugal, which saw its industry sacrificed over the last few decades through EU policies. And my question is precisely that. Are you comfortable with a work program that brings no perspective so that, for example, in Portugal, we can bring back our industrial capacity, particularly in strategic sectors and in areas that are particularly essential to satisfy the needs of our country and our development? Thank you. I very strongly support SMEs. I think this is supporting them is the clear link between this program and Portugal, keeping in mind as more than 90% of companies in Portugal are small and medium-sized. This program focuses on helping them, and this is a very good signal for Portuguese companies. Thank you.
Mario Mantovani, 1 minute.
Presidente, Commissario.
Thank you, President. Commissioner, colleagues. The Commission Working Programme for 2025 introduces a number of significant changes of policy vis-à-vis the past. And indeed, it has taken on board many of Fratelli d'Italia's policies, simplification, cutting bureaucracy, and other policies which we've advocated for a long time. This is an improvement on the 13,000 plus policies adoption in the past. Yet, Commissioner, this Parliament since 2024 has only adopted a very few pieces of legislation, and much of the legislation that is proposed in 2024 is actually it's not legislation, it's non-legislative proposals. Trump has adopted hundreds of executive orders. Why haven't you done something like that? Something akin to his approach or Millet would be much better solution to standing up towards Chinese competition and to dealing with things like illegal migration.
Commissioner, that is quite a poor start. 10 minutes for the whole work program, no president here, no Kaja Kallas again. My colleagues were polite, but let's spell it out. This is disrespectful. Disrespectful to European citizens and to us, their elected representatives in this House. Now on foreign and defence policy. You announced plenty of good strategies. We stand with Ukraine, we push for enlargement, a European Defence Union, cybersecurity, Middle East strategy, and hidden in the fine print, finally, a review of our Iran policy. But the main strategy is missing, Commissioner. How do we make member states understand that they are weak if alone in a world of bullies? That these are joint European strategies and not papers that they can bluntly ignore, like they're ignoring us today, by the way. And one last thing. We cannot fix every Trump mess. But one we must and we can. Supporting and protecting human rights defenders and free journalists wherever they are under threat, be it in Russia, Venezuela, Iran, or in exile in the European Union. US aid has long led the way. Now we need to step in. These people aren't just activists. They are our biggest allies in the fight against bullies, autocrats and warmongers.
Thank you very much. Now Lee Anderson, 1 minute.
Honourable Chair, not a good start indeed. This work programme, which is supposed to be about moving forward together, includes 0 legal initiatives in the field of social fairness. 0. Instead, we get a long list of initiatives aimed at watering down standard legislation from the last mandate to lower standards when it comes to corporate responsibility and sustainability. Commission, this is not what Europeans expect from you. The rising cost of living and the personal economic situation were the 2 most common reasons for Europeans to vote in the last EP election. Now it seems like the social agenda is forgotten altogether, and the Commission is focusing on deregulation in a way that in the end will not even benefit the companies. If we move along this policy line, we risk moving backwards, divided.
Thank you very much. Now Thomas Geisel, 1 minute.
Frau Präsidentin, Herr Kommissar.
Madam President, Commissioner, dear colleagues, I'd like to quote what Karl Valentin said. Hopefully it won't get as bad as it already is. And that's what I thought of when I heard that Mrs. von der Leyen had announced an unprecedented reduction of red tape with the competitiveness compass. There's no mention of the fact that it was precisely Ms. von der Leyen's commission that spent the last 5 years building up an unprecedented increase in bureaucracy. Her party colleague Friedrich Merz actually counted 13,500 rules and regulations can be chalked up to this commission president, and most of these regulations have been termed piffling nonsense by Mr. Merz. And now this commission is supposed to get rid of all of this? This is really setting a thief to catch a thief. Anyone who believes that this can happen would expect precisely the parties that have run Germany's economy into the ground after the last 20 years will bring it forward again. I don't think so.
Madam President, Commissioner, colleagues, the Commission's work programme for 2025 comes at an important moment for the future of the European Union. We are facing a number of challenges: economic recovery, digital transition, and the undermining of the international order. The programme is ambitious but also realistic. We need strong industrial policy that will ensure competitiveness of the European economy. We need to reduce our dependence on third countries and encourage innovation.
the improving of circumstances is key for the revitalization of the European Union, and this also includes the European Affordable Housing Plan. We are expecting to see a proposal, because without that there is no competitive Europe. Also, investment in transport is key for our future. We need a strong, ambitious network of cross-border railway that will make Europe more connected. Also, accession to European funds has to be simplified, but not at the detriment of the goals of the cohesive policy that has to remain strong and geared towards the prosperity of the European citizens. Through the economic policy, we have to make sure that our citizens are guaranteed the right to stay in their regions, the right to education, the right to health. And also, we have to make sure that small and medium enterprises can develop and offer quality jobs. The future of Europe depends on decisive but smart moves that we have to make today. Thank you.
Dank u wel, voorzitter, commissaris.
Thank you very much, President. Commissioner, we already have known for a long time that we've been too dependent on others and too naive, dependent on imported raw materials, imported gas and oil, inter alia from Russia, but also, effectively, imported security. We have been too reliant. We've also been naive in thinking that we could actually afford to behave like this on a continuing basis. But now we've had a wake-up call, and this time is firmly past. We've got to wake up and stand on our own feet. And this ambition, I think, should shine clearly through the Commission work programme and must continue to shine through its future years of policy making. Yes, we have to be open for business, but let us be clear, as far as we are concerned, we have to be open for business whilst respecting human rights, workers' rights, and the principle of sustainability. These are absolutely critical parameters for this. We've also got to tackle and eradicate poverty. It's all very well having the competitiveness compass, but we have a social compass here in Europe, and we need to deliver on these priorities. US aid is evaporating as we watch, and we've therefore got to step into that breach too. The need is for more control and more transparency in the European Union, and we also are going to have to look at the enlargement issues with Moldova and look at what the shape of our relations with Ukraine in the future. Thank you.
1 minute.
The European Union is facing three challenges. We're flooded by migration, which threatens our identity, our freedom, and our security, as well as the finances of Europeans. And you respond with this migration and asylum pact, which will make us think even further. We're faced to competitiveness and all it entails. And you answer with a Green Deal and a tsunami of red tape. And when it comes to AI, you speak of frugal AI. You're dreaming so much that you've reached the moon. And of course, the lack of the very low birth rate is also a problem. And you want to replace Europeans with immigrants. Your program presented very quickly earlier with blazing generalizations do not answer these three challenges, nor the powerlessness that Europeans feel. But we will be an alternative. We patriots will be working on this.
Your Excellencies, Madam President, today the future of Europe is being decided. Our citizens are asking us to wake up. But our administrative, political, and economic Europe seems to not understand. Seems like a distinguished old lady who's now in a wheelchair. Our citizens are becoming radicalized. They are asking us to adapt. And our Europe in our great European capital seems to be sleeping, resting on the laurels of our culture and our arrogance. We are promoting liberty, freedom. But Churchill said, that Europe has to be defended after having been built. And what do? We look at the Americans and tell them they don't have a culture. We curse the Chinese, but they didn't make us a market for their own products. We're complaining that we're losing the war of competitiveness. Socrates, Mozart, Alighieri, and Balzac should teach us a lesson right now. When our house is on fire, we have to turn off the fire. We have to put it out. Mr. Šefčovič, the program is sublime, but the competitiveness you speak of depends on people, and you seem to not know that our economy is on a shameful third place in the world. Our citizens want to be protected in Europe, and they don't want our development to be stifled by the absurd rules of the Green Deal. We are told that we are free to speak, but when we say that a commissioner position has to be occupied based on competence and not on gender criteria, then we are accused of being anti-woke. And then if we say that women are women and men are men, we are also rejected. Freedom of conscience cannot be violated. Isn't the EU one of the most noble constructions in the world? Isn't it a shame that we no longer have a millenary history? We should wake up from this slumber.
Je vais parler en français, Madame.
I'll speak French. Madam President, Commissioner, Ms von der Leyen has announced an unprecedented effort of simplification, but at the same time, the Commission programme for 2025 provides for the continuation of work on 119 regulations and directives, 46 new drafts that will come on top of the 13,000 legal acts already adopted between 2019 and 2024. Clearly, you've understood nothing about this new, fast-moving, ultra-competitive world we live in, and you continue to ignore the essentials. There will be no competitiveness with European electricity that costs 2 to 3 times more than in the United States and China. That is the key issue. That is the priority that we should be focusing on relentlessly. Don't promise citizens competitiveness when you insist on maintaining the policy of the Green Deal, which focuses on renewables. Don't promise them this when you're thinking of creating new European taxes, when you are imposing more and more unfair competition on our businesses with the signature of the Mercosur Treaty. It took a US election to open the eyes of the Commission, so please bear in mind MacArthur's words. Lost battles can be summed up with 2 words, too late.
So we start. Michał Wawrikewicz. Hold on a second. Let's make sure your microphone is on. 754. You need to press the button. There.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Commissioner, what I expect from the European Commission when it comes to strategic initiatives for this term is to be decisive, firm guardian of the rule of law and the democracy, using all possible available tools that you have at your disposal. But not only. I also expect legislative initiatives to be taken to strengthen the existing toolbox. This is what we learned in recent years from the countries which were clearly violating our principles, values and the rules. This is what we learned from Poland between 2015 and 2023. This is what we learned from Hungary until now, that even the most appropriate, correct and rapid use of the infringement proceedings, Article 7, and also conditionality mechanism is not effective enough to protect the rule of law. Therefore, I strongly encourage you to work on it, to work on increasing your tools. And what I want to ensure you is that this House is ready for cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. If you stick to 1 minute, I can squeeze in more members. Juan Fernando López Aguilar.
Commissioner Šefčovič, faced with the Commission work program, the European reply is clear. We need to be more united than ever. We should not give any concessions to reactionary nationalism, which is the opposite of what we need to overcome the main challenges that we face. There are destructive forces such as the Trump administration, or hostile such as the Putin administration. But the most decisive fact in the EU, which is elections in its member states, what the work program proposes in its mantra of deregulation is a new law. As if you're ignoring the fact that more returns does not require more legislation. We need to focus on the transit and origin countries. What we need to do is to apply the asylum and migration plan, because this legislation is mandatory for member states, and this is what we're missing from the Commission work program. Thank you.
Now, Sebastian Tunkunen.
Madam President, when we were voting on this Commission, I warned you. I warned that you could not act surprised when the new Commission comes out proposing something that will not make Europe great again. Now we have the Commission work programme. The Commission also must have heard the screaming demands to start deregulating here in the EU. But in this work programme, the Commission refuses to even use that term. The EU has been a heavyweight regulator for years, but now the Commission agrees only to talk about simplification. Isn't it quite hilarious that yesterday, when the Commission published their programme with mentions of simplification, on the very same day new EU regulation came into effect regulating what kind of plastic bags people in the EU countries are allowed to use and on what occasions? Dear Commission, you still have a long way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tunkunen. Hilde Woutmans.
Dank u wel, mevrouw de voorzitter. Commissaris, we hebben hier...
Thank you. Commissioner, we've been discussing the whole morning long what your lengthy to-do list consists of. I would like to focus on a few things the citizens expect from us. One of them is security. We need to act on that. Secondly, lower energy costs. Thirdly, less bureaucracy and compliance work. And fourthly, better access to capital for investing so that young people can establish companies of their own in Europe. So this is all of the essence, Commissioner. It's absolutely critical that we take action on these points very quickly. Everybody has talked about a sense of urgency. The Europeans don't want to be standing on the sidelines any longer. They want to be in the centre field, and they want action to help our citizens. I think Mr. Gerbrandy has made it crystal clear. You've really got to reform the Union so that it can make progress at the rate of the fastest and not at the speed of the patriots and worse, who were always dragging their feet and preventing any progress. Thank you.
And then I would like to tell you that I will try to include as many colleagues who ask for the floor as possible. So you've asked a blue card question in the debate. I hope you understand that I will not give you the floor now to expand the list. Tilly, go ahead.
Thank you very much, dear President. I'm speaking on behalf of millions that don't have a voice, and about 3 remaining legislative files that are ready to be tabled and were foreseen for end of 2023. But because of the pressure of the lobbyists, they are retained. So I'm speaking about legislation improving animal welfare for millions of animals. It's about slaughtering, it's about clear labelling on animal welfare, and it's about end the cage age, where a successful ECI was asking for that. And the Eurobarometer is also very clear. 9 out of 10 citizens demand stronger protection for the animals. So keep your promises, Commission. So this is also of the EU institutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Lynn Boylan.
Thank you, President. I also want to raise the issue of animal welfare. During the European elections, millions of voters called for a review and reform of animal welfare, including the ECI on the end the cage. Yet the work plan makes very little reference to nature or animals. All morning this debate has been about deregulation, and I sincerely hope that this will not apply to animal welfare. In June, horrific footage emerged from Shannonside Abattoir in Ireland of horses being beaten and desperately mistreated. The EU needs to enforce and enhance its animal welfare, especially in slaughterhouses. But across the Atlantic we are seeing calls for deregulation in meatpacking and slaughterhouses. So I hope that what I've heard this morning is not an indication that we are going to do a race to the bottom, and especially not a race to the bottom on animal welfare.
Thank you very much, Ms. Boylan. Now, Lucas Siepe.
Dear people of Europe, the EU Commission's work programme on paper shares key priorities with the Party of Progress: reducing bureaucracy for businesses, fostering digital and green innovation, strengthening social protection and internal security. Let's see, friends, because we also have 123 open proposals from the previous work programmes. However, this work programme, it falls short in one crucial area, and this is democratic participation. The Party of Progress believes that Europe must not only work for its people, but with them. Because you and me, we both know that populists, extremists and opportunists work to turn the people against our democracy every day, and that also in here, in this temple of freedom. And that's why we need stronger engagement with the citizens to reflect their voices. Democracy itself must always keep pace with economic and social progress. A bolder, simpler and faster union can only be a union of the people. Thank you.
Susanna Glavak.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, dear colleagues. We have identified the problems. I'd like to thank the Commission for doing so, but I would like to say something on behalf of farmers, small and medium entrepreneurs and the Croatian Chamber of Commerce. Europe should not be a continent of bureaucrats. This is why we need real solutions for workers, entrepreneurs, farmers and families throughout Europe. Let's have a look at our industry. Producers are facing high prices of energy and complex regulations. The clean industrial deal is important, but we must cut the red tape, improve and fasten the issuing of approvals for clean energy. If we want to be a front runner in energy, we must invest. This is not just to support big high-tech companies. We must help startups and entrepreneurs in the next steps. Let's not forget, structural obstacles to competitiveness have been identified, but we're still waiting for action now and not in 1 year's time.
Very much. Now, Maria Grappini.
Doamna președintă, domnule comisar, stimați colegi, President, Commissioner, dear colleagues, I think I can start by saying that the President of the European Commission defies us. She shows a total lack of respect and interest towards us. She would have to present the Commission's 5-year program, and she doesn't find time to come speak to the Parliament. I think we should blame her for that. I was the tutor of a student who drafted a program that is better than this one. Any program should say how, what with, and when. And this program of the Commission does not say anything about that. You have nothing for agriculture, nothing for SMEs. We have a social pillar. It was the same president at the helm of the Commission in the last term. How do we recover the money? Frauds sum up huge amounts, and we do not not succeed in recovering that money. Everything starts from here, Commissioner, from the energy problem. I appreciate you, but I do not appreciate the Commission's program.
Dank u wel, voorzitter. In haar werkprogramma legt de Europese...
Thank you, President. In the work program...
De vraag is echter, gaan we het redden met het pakket wat nu voor ligt? Ik ben bang...
This work programme as presented is supposed to increase competitiveness, but you're avoiding the key issues skirting around it. The Green Deal represents significant costs and has a negative impact on competitiveness, and it will not lead to the 90% reduction by 2040. Companies in the Netherlands that do want to adopt a good sustainability policy are not managing to. And we need to be setting a good example in terms of sustainability. Of course, we do need to provide stimulation for innovation, but we need to get rid of the Green Deal to do that.
Commissioner Šefčovič. I think it's very easy to criticise the Commission, and some people do it, and they get elected as a result. But as a Parliament, we have an obligation to work with the Commission to deliver for the people of Europe. And there are 3 areas I just want to highlight. 1, simplification. It has to happen, but a lot of the simplification is not the regulations we're passing here in Europe, it's the bureaucracy that's added at Member State level. And that has to be tackled at Member State level, and not like Viktor Orbán blaming Europe for everything. So 1 in, 1 out. It's not 1 in, 1 out. It's 1 in, 27 out. And then we might make progress. Secondly, in relation to ending our dependency on foreign third countries, especially Russia and China. That's a key aspect. We've got to industrialise Europe. Start-ups, scale-ups and stay-ups. Start, scale and stay in Europe. That's going to be vital, and they will be judged on that in 5 years' time. And the final point is we cannot change the targets in relation to climate change. We must do it in a just, competitive, transitional way.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Now it's Mr. Andriukaitis.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Maras, you know very well, very excellent word, better regulation, not deregulation. Not less regulation, but better regulation. And we know how it is difficult to achieve, especially keeping in mind that the jungles are rooted at member states level. At first, my proposal, yes, it would be good to encourage member states, to council, to look into better regulation. Second, we need to have single market. Now we do not have single market in every area. A lot of tariffs, a lot of barriers between and within member states. We need to press very much. And third, we are speaking about investment competitiveness and Draghi report. But where is our banking union, capital market union, which allow us to be much more effective using investments in our industry? And finally, reskilling is thinking about social pillar of Europeans. It is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Andriukaitis. Now, Thomas Bayada.
Grazie, President.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. European competitiveness must strengthen the position of the Union. However, competitiveness must also uphold citizens and our families. From metropolitan cities to the smallest islands in our country, competitiveness and our environment go hand in hand. Yes, to competitiveness that strengthens citizens' well-being, not irresponsible competitiveness which puts the single market at risk. If we do not act, this will be an attack on our future generations. So let us be ambitious. Let us be resilient. Let us have water resilience. And be wary of our impact on the Mediterranean, on our oceans. Let us solve our economic problems, guarantee social justice, and fight towards a better well-being for our future generations. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bayada. Cristina Mestre.
Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you very much. Commissioner, in 2025, that'll be the year that the work will begin the new CAP, taking into consideration the long-term possibilities of the budget. Now, there's increasingly information to the effect that there may be cuts in the CAP. These what about the conditions for that? Is this one of the priorities of the Commission? Isn't it the Commission's priority to bolster the CAP? And it's just 1 year since the historic protests of farmers. And actually, as far as the future presentation, the future presentation of what the agricultural policy is to be, that still hasn't been completed. We have issues such as the generational change. We have also different types of reforms that are to take place in the agricultural world, also management crisis in agriculture and the environment. Nothing has said about this. Nothing was said about this in the Commission work program. And as concerns the budget for the CAP, nothing about that either.
Chers collègues. Colleague, some of you haven't understood the absence of Ursula von der Leyen. In the Socialists, we understand that. This work programme has been put together without us. We signed for a Europe of peace, people and planet. 3 Ps. Make Europe great for peace, people and the planet. We haven't signed up for a programme that is about deregulation, deregulation and deregulation. The omnibus of deregulation, with all the budgets which are conditioned to reforms, as you called, which actually is deregulation. Competitiveness compass is actually deregulation. What majority do you think you can have for this programme? Because we won't give our consent for an agenda of deregulation. Deregulation, that is strengthening the strongest and weakening the weaker. Without consent, there will be no agenda, as you know. We have to come back to the roadmap originally. We are ready to do that. Thank you very much.
Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Madam President, honourable members of the European Parliament. First and foremost, I very much appreciate this true and very lovely debate. And I listened carefully to your remarks, and I will do my utmost to give answers to as many of you as possible. I'm sure I will not be able to cover the whole debate, but I know that my fellow colleagues in the Commission are looking forward to debate this further in the committees in the form of the structured dialogue. So I will start with the comments of Mr. Leonard, Mr. Schneiderman and my good friend Mr. Andriukaitis, who have been commenting on the process of adoption of this Commission work programme, number of strategies and simplification or cutting red tape proposals. And I think that you know very well that this is the first Commission work programme of the new Commission. And it's always done in a special way, simply stemming from the fact that the Commission entered into office only on the 1st of December. So it's only natural that political guidelines approved by you in this House must be translated into political actions, which are usually strategies at first. This year we will go back to a normal cycle where commissioners will have structured dialogues with all of you in respective committees to discuss together how we are implementing this programme, but how we are preparing for the programme for next year, for 2026. If it comes to the calls for high quality of legislation or more progress in cutting red tape, here I would have a plea, because it would help a lot if co-legislator, European Parliament and the Council would also provide their impact assessments on major amendments and an analysis of the possible cost and impact of burden of Article 225 legislative initiatives. We just simply have to work on this together. I agree with Madam Ayer that the sense of urgency should guide us all to act faster and more efficiently. The competitiveness compass was already adopted 2 weeks ago. The clean industrial deal will be adopted in 2 weeks. In the compass, we also announced many sectoral initiatives that are planned for adoption in the next months, such as the automotive sector or the steel action plan that Mr. Shaheen was wondering why it was not included. I appreciate that Madam Garcia Perez highlighted the social dimension of our policies. The Commission work programme we presented to you focuses on strengthening social fairness in transforming economy. The new action plan to implement the European Pillar of Social Rights, the Union of Skills, the 2030 Consumer Agenda, the renewed equality strategies just highlight this dimension. And of course, the quality jobs roadmaps, as strongly requested by our social partners in the dialogue with Executive Vice President Roxana Mizatu, which was held in the preparation of the Commission work programme, are also included. I also would like to respond to Mr. Bosanak's passionate plea on affordable housing. And I totally agree with him. Together with the first ever Commissioner responsible for housing, Mr. Dan Jorgensen, who will be consulting all stakeholders to ensure that the affordable housing plan will bring a real impact on the ground. We need to work on it. It was never done before, and I can assure you that it will come into the Commission work programme for the next year in 2026. And I'm sure that also newly established Special Committee on Housing Crisis of this House will certainly contribute to this work. As regards the state aid that Mr. Schindemann raised as well, we announced in the Commission work programme that we will develop a new state aid framework to accelerate the rollout of renewable energy, strengthen industrial decarbonisation and ensure sufficient manufacturing capacities for the clean tech. And I also would like to reassure Mr. Hojsík that he can expect the single market strategy, which is coming to your tables already in the second quarter of this House. To Madam Bishop, I just would like to highlight that indeed we adopted already the competitiveness compass, but we also clearly reflected on the very important social aspects. Mr. Agiu Saliba and Madam Bishop with highlighting the need to accelerate the work on the right to disconnect. But I'm sure, as you know, this was already planned. So we are not going to put it into the Commission work programme again. We just simply need to work on this. And we completed the second round of public consultation, and I can also assure you that my colleague, Executive Vice President Mizantu, will be working on delivering the impactful initiative on anti-poverty as well already in next year. To Mr. Maniatis, I'm sure that you will agree with me that the upcoming pact for the Mediterranean has to precede the strategy on the Middle East. And we clearly mentioned that we continue our work on this as announced earlier. In regards to multilateralism, I think that with many of you we had excellent debate on this yesterday, where I think I was pretty clear in reconfirmation the commitment of the Commission and I would say of the whole European Union to continue strengthening and highlighting the importance of multilateral approach to solve the global issues. To Madam Vosenberg and Mr. Lopez Aguilar, I can only agree with you. You will find in the Commission work programme the European migration and asylum strategy to ensure proper implementation of the pact, as well as the new common approach on returns, which would be a legislative proposal to be tabled soon. We are planning to do it already in the first quarter. Mr. Kelleher and many others asked about the simplification measures for the common agriculture policy. And I know that my colleague Christopher Hansen is working very hard on that. And this package will address sources of complexity and excessive administrative burden for farmers in managing, monitoring, reporting, but also leveraging the potential of the digitalisation. Madam President, if you allow me to close with two important elements. I would like to highlight once again, because it was raised by many honourable members. For the Commission, this is absolutely crystal clear. Simplification doesn't mean deregulation. Yesterday, we also adopted the communication in this regard on implementation and simplification that my colleague Valdis Dombrovskis, who is in charge of this exercise, will present shortly. shortly, and I'm sure that you will have the chance to discuss it with him as well. And as regards the EU's long-term budget, it is expected in summer. We adopted yesterday the roadmap to the next multiannual financial framework that outlines the key policy and budgetary challenges that will share its future. And with this communication, we are actually launching the dialogue Europe-wide with all the stakeholders and most importantly with the European Parliament and with the Member States. If you allow me, I would like to conclude by last two sentences. First one, I really would like to reassure all of you of our utmost respect of the President and the whole Commission to this House and to the special relationship between European Parliament and the European Commission. And the words of Mr. López Aguilar about the unity should be repeated all the time, because now in this fragmented world we need it more than ever. And just to recall, the Commission work programme was always presented by the Commissioner responsible for interinstitutional relations, and I know it quite well because also over the last 5 years it happened to be me. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Okay, thank you very much. Looking forward to that. Mr. Lennes, you have a point of order.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Many colleagues indeed were critical of the level of representation of the Commission. Indeed, as the Commissioner has said, it is standard practice that the Commission responsible for the relation with the Parliament comes here to present the work programme. But more importantly, of all the members who complained, with the notable exception of Mr. Gerbrandy and Ms. Neumann, all of them have left without waiting on the answers of the Commission. So I would also say to those colleagues, respect goes both ways.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for this debate. I think it worked very well. The next item on the agenda is Parliament's statement, 1 year after the murder of Alexei Navalny and the continued repression of the democratic opposition in Russia. I will inform members that this will only consist of one round of political group speakers for this debate, and therefore there is no catch-the-eye procedure and no blue cards. A few words from my end first. This coming Sunday marks 1 year since the murder of Alexei Navalny after years of torture and imprisonment in Russia. Alexei Navalny was many things. He was a Sakharov laureate, he was an outstanding politician and a beacon of hope for many across Russia and around the world. He spent his life fighting corruption and standing up for what he believed in. His enemies thought that they could silence his voice. They were wrong. It continues to inspire and it continues to galvanize people across the world. In this House, just days after his murder, we welcomed his brave wife, Yulia Navalnaya. Yulia called on all of us to continue the fight for freedom and justice. And this House remembers him and what he stood for. So I'll open the floor now to the group speakers, starting with the EPP Group, Standra Kalniete. 2 minutes.
Dear colleagues, you are not allowed to give up. This is the message Alexei Navalny left for the Russian opposition after his death. He knew that the repressions would only become more barbaric. He was not mistaken. The Kremlin consolidates its power through measures that resemble the scale of an Orwellian dystopia. The number of political prisoners is rising. Even Navalny's lawyers and colleagues are now imprisoned in high-security prisons. For now, unlike Stalin, Putin doesn't use the judicial system to execute the oppositioners. He handles it more discreetly by poisoning, bombing or throwing opponents out of windows. The Russian opposition has been weakened to a critical level. Therefore, it's our duty to support civil society activists in Russia and also the opposition working outside of it. Political repressions serve Putin to secure his expansionist policies and hybrid operations against neighbouring countries. He is determined to continue the war of aggression against Ukraine. The Kremlin is heavily involved in the elections of Georgia, Moldova and European countries. Regular attacks are taking place on Europe's critical infrastructure. Paid Kremlin agents operate within European institutions of power. Russia is and will remain the greatest threat to European security. Europe must finally understand that Ukraine's victory is a matter of European security and future. Our support for Ukraine is insufficient both in terms of sanctions and military aid to secure its victory. The EU and NATO countries must support Ukraine more speedily and decisively. Ukraine's victory will limit Russia's military capabilities. Ukraine's victory will be the death toll for Putin's regime and hopefully the beginning of Russia's path to normalization rather than further chaos. Thank you.
Now for the S&D Group, Andreas Schiede, 3 minutes.
President, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I think that many of us are feeling the same thing that we felt a year ago with the horrible news about the assassination of Navalny. Unfortunately, we were not surprised because so many opposition activists have experienced the same fate. Those who are criminalized by the Kremlin live dangerously. Litvinenko and many others are examples of that. And when Russia, and in Russia, whoever calls out for democracy lives dangerously, is accused of being a foreign agent, is put in a penal colony, their families are threatened, the human rights situation is horrible, and we've seen this, of course, with Russia's exit from the European Convention of Human Rights as well, and the criminalization of Memorial, and the shutting it down of that organization as well. Numerous court procedures, prosecution against those who supported Navalny, against his aides as well. All independent media has now been either closed down or has been heavily censored. And all of this shows that Putin is an enemy of democracy. And the first sacrificial victim are people, the people themselves in Russia. Alexei Navalny's wife, Yulia, was here in the European Parliament, in the plenary, and she said the following: "My husband will never see what the beautiful Russia of the future will look like. But we must see it, and there are still people in Russia that see a better future, people who are fighting courageously for the future, for a democratic future in Russia, people who are ready to give everything up for democracy, for rule of law. They're ready to risk everything. And these people require our solidarity, our support, and really our calling out for human rights, for democracy in Russia, in Europe, for everywhere in the world, and to fight against all enemies of democracy."
Romain Dionnet, 1 minute.
In his memoirs, Navalny says the biggest error in the West is to mix up the Russian state and the Russian people. Navalny fought against the Kremlin and corruption. His enemies saw him as a puppet of the outside world. Certain liberal circles excluded him because they thought he was too liberal. He had become a orthodox. He talked about the central doctrine of modern Russia. He talked about, unlike Tolstoy, he believed in the role of the individual in history, rather than speeding up things and creating radical change. What do we learn from Alexei Navalny? Russia can take a direction which is Russia is seeing Europe as hostile, but another direction is possible, and not one where one is opposed against the other.
Nicola Procaccini.
For the ECR, Nicola Procaccini.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, President.
The rest of my life in prison and die here. There will be no one to say goodbye to. These were the final words of Alexei Navalny, spoken from a prison in the Arctic Circle where he had been confined. Sadly, he was right. Those words appear in a book that encapsulates Navalny's choice, with a simple yet powerful title, Patriot. His wife, Yulia, said that sharing his story will inspire others to stand up for what is right and never lose sight of the values that truly matter. In this chamber, you all know me. I'm a conservative, a man of the right. I deeply love my nation, and that is why I hold profound admiration for this Russian martyr. And it's also why I despise those who, while calling themselves patriots, undermine his legacy and disregard his sacrifice. Personally, I can hardly imagine the courage it takes for a man who, after miraculously surviving yet another assassination attempt, kisses his wife and children goodbye and boards a plane to return to his homeland, facing a cruel and murderous regime head-on. What is worth it? The fact that we are here today speaking about him is a proof that it was. I believe that the courage of a few can inspire the many, and that sooner or later Russia will be free once more. The great Russian writer Tolstoy once wrote, "Just as one torch ignites another, setting thousands aflame, so too does one heart ignite another, setting thousands of hearts ablaze." Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Procaccini. Now Bernard Guetta for the Renew Europe Group.
Highly respected Mr. Navalny, you did not die in vain. In a deliberate sacrifice, you had returned to hand yourself over to Vladimir Putin, your assassin, to tell the world that all Russians, and far from it, did not support this war of aggression or the dictatorship exercised by the sword and by theft. Many thought you were mad at the time because Russia, they said, does not like freedom, but the yoke, that of the Tsars, Stalin or Putin. Many still think so. But they are wrong. Because why does Putin so brutally repress dissenting voices? Why does he not decree general mobilization and call on Mr. Kim's auxiliaries? It's quite simply that he fears the reactions of his people, a people who don't want to die for imperial fantasies and who see prices rising every day, interest rates soaring, and public services increasingly deteriorating. The Kremlin's mercenaries are advancing, they say. Yes, that's true. But how many meters a week? Because he is not winning this war, Vladimir Putin is losing it. Because it is not losing it, Ukraine is winning it. Yes, you were right, dear Alexei Navalny, right not to believe in the invincibility of this little Stalin, and right to want to offer yourself to your compatriots as a positive hero. But what you could not have imagined is that a President of the United States would today proclaim his friendship for Vladimir Putin and sing his praises. You, who lived freedom so much, could never have believed that there would be an American president who would haggle over his aid to Ukraine with such greed and lack of awareness of the danger. We could not have imagined it either, but we're still on Ukraine's side, and we increasingly admire in you a new Sakharov.
To please be quiet while some of our colleagues are still speaking in the current debate. Sergei Lagodinsky, 1.5 minutes.
Ich habe Alexei getroffen.
I met Alexei one day before he traveled back from Germany to Russia, and frequently I think about him. Frequently I've asked, what would Alexei himself say if he were here? He would speak much more and with greater depth about these particular issues. He would fight against Putin, against the war without any fear. He said, I have no fear, and you ought also have no fear. He would speak about people. He would speak about people that have been killed, tortured by the regime. His Alexei Liptsev, Kopchev, Sergunin, these people, only because of having defended Navalny, they are now incarcerated. He would spoken about Alexei Gorinov, who 7 years tortured now in a penal colony. Zhenya Berkovich, Svetlana Bekerchuk, 7 years because of a harmless theater piece. Numerous others for 7 years in prison for having been active in Alexei's NGO. When you don't forget all of these people who are against war, who are against Putin, and who are sitting now in prison and are dying from cancer, Elena Bistrova, Maxim Birno, Litov, Zhukov, Laputin, all of these people have been courageous enough. They are an indication of hope. They are Alexei Navalny. A week ago, Stroikin, who has fought against the war, fell out of a window, died mysteriously. So indeed, we have to be strong. We have to be strong, and we have to be aware of how strong we are. We're simply not aware of it, but we have to reveal that strength. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. About 1 year ago, Alexei Navalny died in a Russian penal colony. He was killed because he was a prominent opposition person and critic of the regime. The corrupt dictatorship of Vladimir Putin was criticized by him. I can't understand all the stages in the political life of Navalny, but I recognize his political courage, which for many in Russia was an inspiration and remains so. That this debate here today should be the cause to think of all those who are currently in Russian penal colonies and are suffering a similar fate as Navalny, because they're courageous and they're prepared to suffer, and they've criticized the Putin regime. We should would step in for the freedom of political prisoners and conscientious objectors to the war. Thank you very much.
Volgin, 1 minute.
It is a shame how the West makes use of Navalny's death. The people who took 2 years to investigate the explosion of the Nord Stream needed only a couple of minutes to organize an investigation, to stage a trial, and to identify the culprit. They had no evidence at all, but they ruled Putin had killed Navalny. Let's see facts. First of all, the Russian army was advancing in Ukraine at that time and captured Avdiivka. Secondly, it was again at that time that Putin gave an interview to Tucker Carlson. That was a great success of Kremlin. Thirdly, presidential elections were upcoming and Putin won overwhelmingly. That's what happened. Well, against that backdrop, why would the Russian leadership need to kill Navalny? Why would they kill someone who had no significance? No normal person will believe, but normal thinking is far beyond this place.
Thank you. The sitting is resumed. We now come to the votes. First voting is about the report by Ludovic Oder on VAT rules for the digital age. I will give the floor to the rapporteur for 2 minutes. Where is he?
Okay, now
Thank you.
I can see that the light is right. I just wanted to thank all the stakeholders for supporting this initiative, because I guess that this clearly shows that the Parliament is now going in the right direction. This is about using the funds which are lost in the VAT regime every year for much better purposes. And since we are in need of reforming our budgets and making funds available for consolidation in many countries, including Slovakia, e-invoicing is quite important. Also, a platform economy regime and a one-stop point for VAT registration. According to estimates, there are 20 billion euros available for other purposes if we can fight against tax fraud and corruption. So, at the end, I would like to ask this plenary to support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will proceed to a single vote by roll call vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. And it is adopted. We now pass to the report by Aurore Laluc on the administrative cooperation in the field of taxation. It is a single vote by roll call vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed, and it is adopted. Pass now to an objection, genetically modified maize DP 910521. We start by Amendment 3 by roll call vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. And it is rejected. Amendment 1 by show of hand. In favour? Against? Abstention? It is rejected. Amendment 2 by roll call. The vote is open. The vote is closed. And it is accepted. Vote for the resolution as a whole by roll call. The vote is open. The vote is closed. And it is adopted. I would like to remind members who are the speakers list for the first debate in the afternoon to remain in the chamber, as the debate will start immediately after the votes. We are passing now to the objection about genetically modified maize MON 95275. Amendment 3 by roll call. The vote is open. The vote is closed. And it is rejected. Amendment 5 by roll call. The vote is open. The vote is closed.
and it is rejected. Amendment 1 by show of hand. Who is in favour? Who is against? Abstentions? It is rejected. Amendment 4 by roll call. The vote is open. The vote is closed. It is rejected. Amendment 2 by roll call. The vote is open. The vote is closed. And it is accepted. We vote now for the resolution as a whole by roll call. The vote is open. The vote is closed. And it is accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. And if I can request a quiet in the hemicycle, because we need to start the next debate. Please, if you have discussions to have, then if you can have them outside, thank you very much. Zápisnice zo včerajšieho rokovania a prijaté.
We have the minutes from last night's session that are already available. If you have no comments, then the minutes are approved. And now let's have a look at the debates. The first debate and the next item on the agenda will be the topical debate. Rule 169, collaboration between conservatives and the far right as a threat for competitiveness in the EU. And given that this debate is under Rule 169, you don't raise your hand to speak, and no blue cards will be given either, okay? Just so that we know. And to open the debate, we have Mr. Repassi. Please take the floor. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Kolleginnen und Kollegen,
Colleagues, I see a clear way ahead where we can use the strength of our continent and make our single market fit for the challenges of this centuries. With more Europe, we break down barriers which face our companies, and together we have high standards of protection for employers and the environment, making ourselves attractive for skilled workers from the whole world. We make our capital market interesting for investors, with public investments for a clear climate-neutral economy for tomorrow, so that we have predictability and reliability from politics in our decisions. Instead of that, I see in Europe how conservatives from the in the middle are drifting to the right. It's the new approach, not just to control our internal borders, but to close them completely. European law is becoming optional. It is only respected if it suits political opportunity. The predictability of politics is being binned. The chairman of the CDU says in Parliament there won't be an occasional majority with those people over there in the AfD. I quote. 2 months later, that's all obsolete. 2 weeks ago in the German Bundestag, it wasn't a small thing like a debate being put on the agenda. It's about law, and this law only succeeded with the votes of the far right for the first time since the end of the Second World War. That went well because after this breaching this dam of this resolution, one group refused to vote for it, but the damage is huge. This was unreflected and a cheap way of trying to get a majority with the far right. Where will that stop? Where will it end? Tax cuts for the rich, 47 billion euros, and the more spending on defence is not being included. The AfD is talking about more. If we don't have the economic growth we're looking for, all that remains is cuts to social benefits. That is redistribution from the bottom to the top. We are financing the enrichment of the tops. The jobs of of tomorrow will be created somewhere else. Europe will become an industrial museum. None of that. What is politically in the centre seems to be secure tomorrow, if it can be swept away so easily with the far right. Opportunism has replaced integrity. Conservatives are playing with fire and are withdrawing from common decisions. You are undermining certainty of planning. That doesn't have to happen. Remain in the centre. stand up to the far right. Don't confuse competitiveness with the Wild West approach of tech billionaires. It's not about unbridled deregulation. It's about people in Europe having safe jobs tomorrow, good wages, and being able to live from their work. The reliability of a strong single market and a proper single market must stand up now.
Ďakujem pekne.
Thank you so much. And the next speaker will be for the Council, Minister Šlapka. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, honourable members, Mr. Commissioner. It is an honour to address today's two debates on European competitiveness on behalf of the Council. I know how much the European Parliament values this topic, which has been consistently high on your agenda during the last month. As we navigate through an era marked by economic transformation, geopolitical shifts and climate challenges, ensuring that Europe remains competitive